Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Builders of Authority podcast. Quick reminder before we hop into today's episode that we are continuing to grow our Builders of Authority community online. Builders of Authority is committed to helping you become the authority in your industry with personal branding and brand building. We have our free Facebook group that you can join by typing in Builders of Authority into the search bar on Facebook. In that group, we have daily content, live weekly trainings, and much more. We have our Builders of Authority Mastermind, which includes a private Facebook group, 3 live weekly trainings and sessions, and access to our personal branding course and more. One-to-one personal branding coaching and consulting is also available. Reach out to us at buildauthority.co or send me a DM on social media and let's have a conversation. Today's episode is one where I'm joined by somebody that I've been connected to for over a year now. Watched him grow and scale multiple different ventures. I've been a guest on his podcast, The Kitchen Table, and I'm a member of his free online community, Blue Collar Ballers. He's also got a mastermind membership, which we'll dive into a little bit here as well. He's grown in many ways over the past year since I've known him. This guest is someone that's leveling up all over and continues to raise the level at which he competes. My guest today is Kenny Baden. He is the owner at Potomac Custom Remodeling. Kenny, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time coming, and super excited to dive into your story here today, because I know your story, and I've heard different bits and pieces, but excited to bring it all together. If you wouldn't mind just kind of kicking off the show by letting people know, who you are, what you do, kind of where you got started, and where things are at today.
Yeah, certainly, man. And I apologize again for doing this from not from my fancy setup like you have there. I have enough respect for you or anybody that asks me to come on their podcast to make sure I have all the best equipment. But as you might be able to hear, I'm also a little under the weather.
Yeah, all good.
So between that and back-to-back meetings, I'm here on the iPhone and the little ear pods, but we're going to make this thing work. So question was just kind of bringing some of that story to light. Was that what you wanted me to do real quick?
Yes, sir.
So for the sake of not making this anything longer than like this usual 30-minute format, I'll try to skip to just like the most relevant points. But the long and short is I struggled with, addiction for probably about a decade. And when I say that, I don't want people to think like, oh, I wasn't raised that way. I didn't know anything about drugs, or it's just not something I did. Military father. It just isn't how I was raised or the people I hung around. But I was in a car accident. The car accident led to painkillers, and you've seen the shows and stuff, and that's what happened to me. So, that's the longest and shortest way that I can put that. And the result of that went from college graduate. Barely, by the way, because it was toward the end of my college. It was the beginning of the college experience. I had the accident, and towards the end, it kind of just all started to unravel. And by then, right after I graduated that year, in fact, 2010, I went to 3 rehabs and jail. So I went from college graduate to convicted felon for trying to rob a Hallmark store of all places, which sounds funny to repeat, but I'm sure that they didn't think it was very funny. They being the authorities, but I was out of my mind, man. I didn't, I wasn't good at what I was doing, living that way. I mean, nobody is, I guess. But that substance had reduced me to a subhuman, just, I always say there's some fates worse than death. And I would say that would be, for me, that would be worse than death. I would choose death every time over living like that, because you're not living. At some point, there was a point where I got to, in the end, where it was existing. And even the existing, you knew that your existence was pain to people you cared about. And it was a fact. You know how you tell people like, oh, I should just die or whatever. I don't know. When you're a kid, maybe, or you're being dramatic, or I wish I was just not here. And they go, oh, no, don't say that. I knew for a fact that my family and the people I care about were better off if I wasn't here under those circumstances, right? If I couldn't get things right, that was a fact, because even if they weren't, even if I didn't have a phone, even if they didn't have to call me or hear, or they were always worried, I was always stealing something, whether it was peace, by the way I was living, because they're always waiting on a phone call. And we just don't think about those things that way when you're in it. But towards the end, it sort of had hit me like, man, this is really just like, I don't enjoy anything in life anymore. I don't want to be here. I'm over this. I didn't plan on coming back. So I had a long road to get back. And this was all about, it'll be 7 years in August 23rd of 2017 is my sobriety date, which consequently is when things started to turn the corner. Now, for me, in those years, I have had instances of like where things weren't as bad, right? It doesn't start off like that. So I would started in sales in those years too. I mean, you got to do something when you have these like periods of doing okay and then bad again and okay and then doing bad again. And sales kind of lined up perfectly for those moments of like when I was okay, because I could make really good money really quick. It just so happened I was good at it. I took to it. I love people. Quintessential extrovert. I'm a 99I, 99D in the DISC test. So like, I just, it's where I fell into and was like, oh, I can't go to the grocery store without talking to somebody. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, and my wife thinks it's the oddest thing, but it's where I belong, And so having said that, I had all the experience in sales. So when I finally did come back around this time and people asked, like, well, what made you, I was sleeping outside again. And this time it was only one night, but it was enough, man. Like I had done that before once and thought that was rock bottom. I'll never do that again. And here I am again. And I was just like, man, I walked to a hospital. I asked for help. They gave me help. The only thing that was different between this time and any of the other times, and there were many, and that decade was that I think I had been thoroughly beaten enough. And we're hard-headed individuals. We can be men, period, I suppose. But I think a lot of people in addiction, we kind of have that, I don't know, personality trait, perhaps even sales, right? But it took me a lot of convincing that I couldn't do it on my own. And it was when I finally was like, you know what? I need some help, man. I'm done trying to control this. And that's kind of been a theme since then, man. Is like I didn't plan on coming back. I didn't have a bank account, a driver's license. My license was suspended. I had no copies of any documents that supported I was even a human being. So I couldn't just go get these things. I had to re-get all of them. I truly didn't plan on coming back. It was like 3 years ago I was able to even get a bank account. And, here I sit in my home in Annapolis, Maryland, which is in a beautiful neighborhood, very coveted. This is somewhere that we would have never thought we would be. I'll tell you that a couple of years ago. This was like our dream area to live in. My wife and I have a wife, right? Like I'm married to an attorney of all people. You know what I mean? And her and I had met a long time ago, and I wasn't super popular in her eyes post that meeting, but we also met again in sobriety, and she agreed to help me declare bankruptcy or not. And she encouraged me not to. And had she encouraged me to, I wouldn't have my business. I wouldn't have my house. I wouldn't have any of these things. And she wouldn't be reaping the benefits of any of these things. So it's been an interesting journey, man, to get here. But my background has always been in like in-home sales, remodeling sales. I've sold insurance. I've sold suits, just lots of sales. So that's kind of what the connecting theme is, I suppose. But the resolve and just having just kind of like to just continue to exist, almost fighting the natural, I don't know, want to just give in and give up, like what am I don't want to be here anymore. And then like applying that, it takes a lot to live like that. It takes a lot to scheme and plot and hurt and want and hate yourself. And every single day, all you think about is, okay, what am I going to do today to get the things I need? And knowing none of those options are good, none of those options are going to help anybody. You're just taking. You hate. Every morning you wake up, it's just like, it's the worst day of your life, And then now it's like you get an opportunity to really come out of that. I mean, truly come out of that. Like not just, yeah, I'm doing a little better, but like, man, I got a real shot at this. And you apply that same effort to anything good, and then go figure. We're kind of high achievers, we're kind of go-getters, And I see that a lot, man. I see that a lot. I see that a lot in guys like Todd Price. He's got a roofing company where he's got a lot of folks that have similar backgrounds and they excel. Brandon Jay, same thing. Myself, same thing. They're not all hits, but when they hit, they go, man. They're just looking for another shot. And you apply that, I'm telling you, you smoke just about anybody, especially somebody who's never felt what it is to lose everything, or knows the sting of just like the gratitude, I think, is really the connecting piece. And I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but I think that really just will take you so far, that gratitude of like, holy crap, and you hold on to that too. Because I've seen guys come out, crush it, and then all of a sudden they forget where they came from. And I've seen guys die from that actually in recovery, if I'm being very frank. But yeah, that's my story. So sorry to hijack the first half of your show.
No sorries, no apologies needed, man. I knew parts of that. Now bringing it all full circle, it's just a testament to you taking what was such a negative time in your life and channeling a lot of those traits into what you've built today. And one of the things that I really admire about what you're doing is the impact you're having on other people, right? So the people that are on your team, the people that come into your ecosystem, what you're doing with your podcast and your Blue Collar Ballers community, I think that's a testament to you saying like, hey, not only did I survive this, but I'm making the most of it, and I want to help other people through that journey as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's not only I think it's a must. In the beginning with the company, it was like all comprised of guys like that, and I learned a little bit of a lesson there too, because I was also not only trying to just bring them in, but it was like, I'm going to bring them in and help them. And help was the operative word there. Like, you're helping them by providing a safe space for them to work. That's not like, especially in sales, because typically those environments aren't super friendly to sober living. But I took that, as we tend to do, and I'm like, I'm going to go to meetings with these guys. I belong to a 12-step fellowship. I'm going to sponsor them, which is a big no-no. And I'm now involved in all aspects of their lives. I'm meeting them at meetings after work. I'm making sure they're good. It was just too much for them, too much for me. It was very early on. It was 2 companies ago, but it almost probably killed myself. I mean, not killed myself. It almost killed my ass. Just how much it had me, emotionally attached to these folks that are precarious early on. And I learned that, like, okay, early on, man, the pendulum could swing either way, because that's what it did for me. Right. But I found a good, happy medium in allowing those opportunities for people with time. They have a lot more, statistically speaking, they're a lot more likely to stick to it. And I can really kind of work with those folks. But ultimately, man, for me, it's just about creating the opportunity that I was given. I don't need to do much more than that, but set an example and then create the opportunity. I think that alone is huge. I think I got too deep in that, like, I'm going to work with these guys one-on-one. You know what I mean? Especially as a scale, it's just not realistic to work with everyone one-on-one that's in recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things where you can only help so much as well. Like, there's only so much, Kenny. There's only so much time and resources that you have, energy, etc. And so it makes complete sense. What would you say as far as like the entrepreneurial journey as a whole, as it's been growing and scaling this business? What were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome as the CEO of in running these companies that maybe you weren't necessarily privy to, that have really just, once you got over those humps, were like, okay, this is this next level that we're at right now?
Having to shed the folks that, I had to learn the hard way that what gets you here won't necessarily get you there. And perhaps your setup is that way. But when you take a look and see, like, okay, we're at 5 to 7. Do we have the people to get to 10? We're at 10. Do we have the people to get to 20? Do those people internally, the support cast, not the sales folks, because I tend to focus, that's my jam, right? And I've never had a huge issue there, right? Like, it's shocker, right? But your foundation needs to be able to support the volume, right? So if the supporting cast isn't going to be able to handle 35 million, or that's our goal this year, right? So like, we had to go out, we had to find the right people for the right seats and identify what those seats were. And I would say the hardest part about that is then you have to make hard decisions about who isn't the right person for the right seat. If there's a book called Good to Great And there's also EOS, and it talks about, what you can do in those situations, whether you put the right people, you identify right person, wrong seat, right person, right seat, good, wrong person, wrong seat, out. So either you move them, which is the best case scenario, and hopefully they're happy for that, but also you may have to cut them, you may lose them. And so for me, that's been the hardest part. I don't think anybody likes cutting people or firing people, but trying things and then they don't work out, and then you have great people associated to those things, but like they just don't fit into a role that you really need right now. That's been the worst, is like having to admit, like, this person, I don't know what you're going to do now. I don't know what you do, I don't know, but just allowing that person to sit there and make money and making roles for people, I suppose, would be the thing that I would caution against, because it was what it was told to me. Like, dude, we don't make roles for people. These are positions that we have, and if you're, it's one thing if the person's so amazing that you're like, oh man, like we need his skill set. Let's consider this. But when it's, I just like this person, let me find something I can pay him to do or her to do, that's a problem.
I've done that.
And I'm guilty of that. So.
Yeah. I've done that a time or two and it never pans out.
No. I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one. But that would be the biggest, like, do not do that. Be steadfast, and this is what we need.
Yeah.
Find somebody who's done it and see what they had. And then, putting the right people for that scale has been all eye-opening. It's been all we've been doing the last 6 months, man. It's just been SOPs, KPIs, which we've already, but like new KPIs, right? Like new workflows, because this workflow got us here, but now we have this workflow and we have these position outline agreements because these positions are changing, because we're now have multiple offices and we have to be able to, support those offices. So it's been really interesting. It's been a lot of work. Spring is a couple weeks away. Our goal is to have it all hired and done and ironed out by spring. We're pretty damn close. Our first big recruiting class comes Tuesday for sales.
Nice.
So yeah, we're right there. I'm happy because we've been spending a lot of money up until that point. If you're looking to 300x, I don't know any way of doing that, like, in 1 year organically. You know what I mean? Like, where it's just going to magically, like, unless you get this crazy storm, which Maryland isn't going to get. So we've got to scale out and take little nibbles here to make the big pot.
Yep.
We knew that because we have market research and metrics of our own, and we know who's doing what here. Having said that, like, we're right there on the precipice of, like, okay, we've been spending all this money to make this huge scale, because again, it's not going to naturally just happen. But thank God we're like right at the tail end of, like, this is where we start making money, because it's been a lot more. Even that's been a lot more than I anticipated. Right? I knew we were going to be making less money because we're spending more money in a time in winter when we make less money. Right? Like, it's just a fact. We already knew that scaling, but then it's like, well, we didn't think about, we need to hire this recruiting arm to help, which is nothing I've ever done before. I just recruit my own folks organically. Like, we've never had an issue. But again, we're not looking for organic growth this year. We're looking for 300x or 400x.
Yeah.
So I need 3 of me, right? And like, so we've got that. That's expensive. We've got, consultants we brought in that I'm always kind of like, I mean, hell, I'm a consultant. I have a consulting company, So like, and I don't mean to say that like dismissively as if I don't trust them, but I know there's a lot out there that, like, some are totally snake oil salesmen. And, for myself, I have receipts. Like, I've helped this person do this or this company do this. This is what I know to do. So I can recreate that and offer that to you. I'm a big fan of being able to show that, outside of anything else, especially because I don't have to do those things.
Yeah.
I can take on a consulting client if I want to. The coaching group, I can take on, folks. I partnered up to make that a lot more manageable for me. I was going to have to completely sideline that otherwise, because this is everything that matters, man. This is it right now. The scale, this is the baby. This is number one. There is no, everything else is just, that'd be great. This is number one though, you know?
No, I love that. And I think a lot of people get sidetracked and then they completely fall on their face and wonder why it happens. It's because they got all these other things that are coming in and taking up their time, energy, and resources, which kind of transitions into the next question that I wanted to ask you is, at what point did you realize that now was the time to also just start building what I would refer to as a very successful personal brand, whether it's your podcast, whether it is you're speaking now, you're consulting, the stuff with Blue Collar Ballers? Like, I feel like you're doing a lot in addition to running this successful company. So at what point did that start to take, fruition and start to scale as well?
About a year ago, and I realized like I could do that kind of like modestly, I suppose. Well, I weighed what time do I have? You know, I put a literal dollar amount to my time commitment, and I hired a guy to follow me around with the camera, you know, and that's an expense.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a couple editors and so on. But I believe in the fact that things are definitely different than they were. I believe in the fact that if you brand yourself, because I watch all these guys that I want to emulate, and I know that my future has always been like, okay, I'm back from the dead. What do I want to do? Because it's got to be fucking glorious. I didn't come back to like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So there's something to be said for coming back from that.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I'm not saying that to say like, I was a handyman. I installed lights. I was prepared to go be an electrician. It wasn't like I'm like, oh, I'm above. It's nothing like that. It's just like I've caught in fire of like, you can do anything in this life, anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to. I tried to do those things, and I kept getting like pushed back into, because I was afraid to come back into like, I don't know, in-home sales or whatever. I kind of like associated that with me always going back, and even my family did. But I really wanted to capitalize on every opportunity, man, to just be great, to just try. I don't want to have a regret, you know what I mean? So at least try like, oh, I'd like to be on stage. I'd like to be Brad Lee. And that's really, you know, Brad Lee, Grant Cardone. Like, man, I look at them like, man, they made it to the major leagues of sales. Whether that's true or not, that's what I identified. Like, they sold, they're now a brand, and it's, to me, the major leagues, right? Like, that's what I want to do. And I've wanted to do that for a long time. And I guess I realized it was possible sooner than perhaps later. And I also realized that it's not going to happen overnight. Having joined these groups, met some of these people, you know, over the last year, I signed up for a couple different groups, you know, I'm working with Stuman, working with Andy, and like learning all of these nuances of people that do it now and what they do and what goes into that. And so for me, it was more like, can I do this while I still do this? It's going to help my brand. A good brand built successfully will only benefit the business. In terms of recruiting, it's been a huge help.
Yep.
And recently what we've decided, we're going to start doing more content specific just to that, like hiring, even commercials locally. Like, if I build a successful brand and I am the brand, right? But I am a roofing company, and I can start to like create these ads locally in my area, you know, it stands to reason that may benefit me as long as I've built a good brand, right? Like, the rest all benefits. And so we're going to be pushing hard this spring on putting content out for roofing, right? For recruiting for roofing, and just for roofing sales. Like, hey, like, people probably don't watch a ton of TV in our demo, but Facebook, then, you know, like social media. So we'll see how that works. But I knew what I wanted to do in the end game, so I wanted to start doing it now, because the way I look at it is, I'm going to get there no matter what. I'm going to get there. So I might as well start preparing for it now. I don't think it's silly to start paying for these things now, because in my head, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to build this company. I'm going to scale this company. I'm going to sell this company. That's the resume piece. Then I'm going to transition into more of the consulting and coaching, which I already have. You know, Ballers was an afterthought. Baden Consulting already existed. It's my oldest company. So like, I was always going to shift into, you know, hey, if you'd like me to, I'll come out and teach your salespeople, or my group will teach your salespeople, or I'll speak on your stage. Ballers was an opportunity to work directly and learn the mastermind concept. I wanted to learn that from somebody that I trusted. And so I bought into that with Stuman, literally, right? It was a paid subgroup, if you will, to learn how to create a mastermind. And I did that for a year with the Blue Collar Ballers, like, just, you know, free Facebook group, but also the mastermind. And the Facebook group I did great with, but the mastermind, I just didn't have time, you know, like, So it was a great group. It just wasn't paying. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm fine with that, man. I liked the group. It was really starting to get some real great traction, but it started doing that in the winter. And that was when we had to be like, dude, no distractions. Yeah. So it was either going to be table blue collar ballers for now, or, I flat out, went to Ryan and said, listen, we're already in this, connected through masterminders, right? Like, why don't we be like actual partners, right? And so that's where that's gone. I needed help, man. That's all there is to it. It wasn't gonna. So his resources, his people, Todd came in, and we really have a good thing going. But yeah, that all started from me literally joining another group, masterminders, to learn how to make a mastermind, and now we're partnered up. And that's way less of a time constraint. That's like, I have 1 hour tonight, 1 hour Tuesday. I'll speak once a quarter, right? Like that I can handle.
Yeah.
I cut recording material for reels during the day and I know, by the way, where I was going with that was my Roger, who follows me with the camera, and my editors, will move them over to Blue Collar Ballers or Baden here very, very soon once the money starts coming in, and it will be very soon, to where we can at least pay for them. That's all I care about. Like, just pay for those 3 guys. I'm good right now.
Yep.
Right now, though, they're on a special project that we can justify paying through the company, which is creating PCR University for our salespeople, for all our people. So when they come in, they have these modules. We've got so many training classes coming in, and we're trying to organically grow. I would be doing 2-week training courses with salespeople for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. And then look at the retention rate with that. Like, right? Like you bring in 20 guys, you land 2, right? Like that's just how it goes, right? Especially with door to door. So I had a buddy of mine that did it, Dallin, successfully, told me it was the best thing he ever did, just like committed to doing it because it sucked taking the time to do it.
Yep.
But so does taking 2 weeks every single day, all day, training guys for 2 guys to stick around. So we're this close to recording the rest of that. This week will probably be done. We'll add a couple of videos, a bunch of videos, but the editing team will edit that up. We've got Go High Level. We'll get the PCR University. So when these guys, this mass influx of salespeople come in, they'll have a cool website to go to and literally log in and do their training from there. I'm really stoked about that. It creates a cohesive, everyone says everything the same way because everyone has the same training videos. I'm really excited about that. So that's a big deal too. I mean, like, that's not something we're just giving them to kind of like, okay, well, we'll cover you for Potomac right now. Like, that's a big deal, you know?
No, that's awesome. I
hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did or not, but
it 100% did. And I think like a lot of things came to mind when you were talking about just the transition of when you realized all those things, but there's a common theme of, hey, I know I don't know something, or I know I don't have the time, energy, and resources to do it. I'm going to go learn from somebody that's done it. I'd rather exchange money so I can get my time back and learn in the process and build something in the process while leveraging my personal brand. And this continues to skyrocket. And then incorporating the university that you guys are doing and just buying more of your time back with one-time assets or exchanges of money. That's where this thing continues to skyrocket. So I really like your outlook on the transition that you're making and how you guys are really taking things to the next level.
I apologize. I muted myself. I have a dog here that tends to get a little loud, so I have to, just in case.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, man. I hadn't thought about that in its entirety. I mean, I suppose I did with the university, but you're right. There's a theme. It's just kind of one big collective, like, how can I condense all of this to get from A to Z way faster than I otherwise would, which is a big thing I always talk about with like mentorship and stuff. But I suppose, I mean, a lot of that's probably just some of what I was talking about earlier, like, hey, we got to go. And I do tell, somebody was talking to me the other day, and like, you seem to have this like real need to be famous, or I don't know what it is, but I think you're going about it the wrong way, whatever, right? Like, and then it's okay. That person's supposed to be there to kind of like help.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and it's not so much, I don't want to be famous. I have specific goals. Like, I know what I want to do with those things. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I'm going about it because I'm not fully focused on like the content and stuff. And I know that's not great, but to me, I'm like, well, at least I'm getting something out there kind of. And hey, I don't know. I don't know if that's good, bad. I try my best to kind of shift over and focus on that. You get what you focus on, but I have to focus on the company right now. So if that's what has to kind of like suffer for right now, that's okay to me, right? That was always like plan B. But I think you can certainly shorten those distances by asking for help, by surrounding yourself with people who have been there. I think a shortcut could be to get connected with people that have great followings. I mean, like these are just, to me, no-brainers. I've always played the network game. I've always played like, who can I meet that knows what I need to know, that I can befriend, that will teach me those things, or that just know the right people. Yeah. I don't even need you to do it for me. Just get me in the room with the right people and I'll do the rest. That's always been my attitude. Mm-hmm. So I have a real problem with anything outside of like that's just what I do. So if I'm being asked not to do that, I'm not saying I am, but like that's just it's like clipping my wings. I'm gonna go. I'm always looking for the next person. It's like I'm looking to meet this guy to this guy to this guy to where I can meet Pat Bet David. Yeah. And I meet Pat Bet David, and Pat Bet David shakes my hand, and maybe, just maybe, I get an intro to where I can like talk to him again or message him, and he might respond to me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or Pat might not, but there's this guy right underneath of him that will. Yep. And I can start to develop a relationship with him. And then maybe, just maybe, that gets me on his podcast, which helps me to make a friend with him. There we go, that dog. But do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's always like the next. Everybody wants to go from 0 to 100, but if we can just get that next step, right, that's all that really matters. Getting one step closer to the eventual, target of what we're trying to accomplish. That's all that really matters.
I just call it strategic relationships. So I could go off and off and off about that. I mean, I really believe you don't have to meet the guy. You can meet the guy under the guy to get to that guy. Yeah. But for me, I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking for that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Well, cool, Kenny. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I know you're building something massive. I know you're super busy. I really, really appreciate it. Where can people stay connected with you online and learn more about all the stuff that you're doing?
So it's official Ken Baden on Instagram, Kenny Baden on Facebook. I believe it's one or the other on TikTok. I should probably know that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the things. It's either Ken Baden or Kenny Baden. I have a YouTube channel that I would really appreciate you guys checking out, because that's a little stagnant. Yeah. I'm trying. And then, of course, we have the Kitchen Table podcast. And then the Blue Collar Ballers group. If you're a home service company, come check us out in the group. We have a paid group. That's a very poor way to say that. A mastermind that has some awesome value there, and I mean that. But I try to let actions just kind of speak there, man. I don't like push or any of that stuff. Like, look, we've got a ton of value there. If you're somebody who's like me that sees that value, then come on, And if not, I'm not going to push you, man. But there's plenty of places where we can go, get up and talk, and I'll help you as best I can. But for me, I love what you said. I love that I can say, yeah, that's great, but if I pay you X, you have to talk to me at this time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to. It gets to a point where I'm like, okay, yeah. I have enough now to where I can buy these hours of your time, and I would much prefer that than the dancing around. But in the beginning, I had to do that, and that's okay.
Yeah, we got to start somewhere, man. No, but we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on, man. Really enjoyed talking with you, learning more about you, and excited to continue to see what you do.
Yeah, my brother, thank you so much for being accommodating, man. Again, I hope my voice doesn't sound too terrible on here and I wasn't sniffing and snorting too much, but I appreciate you guys. I love what you're doing as well. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no, it was great, man. Excited to listen back. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review to those listening in the audience. We're making a massive push for it this year, and it really helps move the needle. So that way more people just like yourself can find the show, learn from amazing guests just like Kenny, and continue to grow and build their brands to become the authority. And remember, authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.